We can all acknowledge that there's a housing shortage, even a housing crisis in the state of California.
Some of the residents are frustrated because there's more traffic, there's mandates from the state.
As the needs of society changes, so should zoning. We can't keep building freeways to build our way out of growth. At some point, we have to say, okay, do we add 2 more lanes? Do we add 4 more lanes? Or do we provide the housing where the jobs are so that we can continue to thrive?
My guest today is Michael Posey, former mayor and city council member for the city of Huntington Beach. Today, he'll explain why California cities need to rezone to get more housing.
I think the state legislature is focused more on the sticks of the punishment or the penalties of not doing it, rather than providing the incentives or the carrots to do it.
I'm Siam Korami. Welcome to California Insider.
Mike, it's great to have you on. Welcome.
Thank you, Siamak, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
We want to talk to you about housing. Housing is one of the biggest challenges for Californians. From one end, we have a shortage in a sense that the cost of housing is going up a lot. From another end, some of the residents are frustrated because there's more traffic, there's mandates from the state. You were serving in a community in Huntington Beach where it's like a beach town.
Right.
That's essentially built out, but it's facing a big mandate. Can you tell us a little bit more?
Sure. By any measure, I guess we can say that we can all acknowledge that there's a housing shortage, even a housing crisis in the state of California. The numbers are fluid. Right now, they say we're short 2.5 million houses. In our region, the Southern California Association of Government, the SCAG region, we're short about 1.2 million, 1.3 million. That translates down to a zoning mandate for each of those cities to zone for new housing. So the mandates from the state are zoning mandates. They're not building mandates per se. So there's I think a common belief that the mandates are to build. We know cities don't build. Builders build, and builders build to satisfy market demands. It's up to the cities to find where zoning can be changed to effectuate the addition of new housing. For coastal cities and for mature coastal cities like ours, we found that the best place to zone, or rezone I should say, is where we have really dying strip malls. And strip malls are, as they say, in the newspapers you read, they're set way back from the street. In front of them is an ocean of asphalt, and you have underperforming, maybe poor performing strip malls that could be repurposed. You could retain those retail centers, move the building forward, have parking in the back, and have residents on top, and even some commercial and office space maybe in the middle. And that's what we did in our city. We did that back in 2010 with what was known as the Beach Edinger Corridor Specific Plan to really concentrate that development on 2 corridors, the Beach Boulevard Corridor and the Edinger Corridor. And that's a workable plan that really should be looked at by coastal cities throughout the state.
So the cities don't build, the developers have to come. And do the developers find these places, or do the cities recognize them?
A little bit of both. Developers will look at a zoning map. They'll look at a strip mall that maybe is for sale. They'll do their due diligence and say, okay, this is an acre. What is the maximum allowed density? And some cities, like ours, it's 35 units an acre. Does 35 units an acre pencil out? Does 35 units an acre pencil out if there's an inclusionary mandate or inclusionary ordinance in that city, which means that they have to have maybe 10% or more affordable units? Can they leverage those affordable unit requirements for a density bonus and build maybe 50 units on that acre if they provide more affordable units? So it's a little bit of both. So developers will look at the market, see what's for sale. They'll check with the city what the underlying zoning is. If the zoning isn't conducive to what they want to do, then they'll work on a zoning change.
Now, a lot of the residents think that this is too much mandate for them. Some residents, they say, okay, we bought in a single family resident. We were committed to this. And now the cities have to change and bring a lot more units. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, zoning is fluid. It's not sacrosanct. So when you zone, the zoning doesn't stop. You say, okay, well, we're zoned. this is the way it is, this is my social contract, I want a single family home, I want a single family neighborhood, you can still have that. But what we're looking at is where can we zone and provide that housing and that economic opportunity. The mandates, nobody likes the mandates. And if we set aside the mandates, cities should be looking at, can we add housing with or without the mandates? Our city has a 13,000 unit mandate for zoning. Remember, not building, but for zoning. So the market will decide if there's 13,000 units that should be built. Personally, I don't think so. When you bought your single family home in the 60s or the 70s, you bought a house that used to be a bean field. So there was an evolutionary zoning change then when we zoned from, in coastal communities up and down the state, rezoned agricultural land to single family homeland. So you went from a house on a 40-acre farm to 10 houses every acre. So you went and added probably 400 houses. Zoning is fluid. And it changes with the time. So zoning is evolutionary. So as the needs of society changes, so should zoning. And 50, 60 years ago, we know Orange County was orange groves, bean fields, and it turned into a suburban destination for LA commuters. They wanted to escape LA and commute to LA. Now, I don't know if you know, but more commuters commute from LA to jobs in Orange County today than they did 50 years ago. So we're evolving, and as we evolve, we have to evolve with the needs of the community and the needs of the businesses. And when we say, okay, well, we've got a zone, businesses need two things in order to thrive. They need employees and they need customers. So when you have businesses like in our city, where we have the highest median age of any city in Orange County, we're at 44 years old, something like that. So we have a lot of people that are retirement age or retiring soon, and they're vacating those jobs. Who's going to fill those jobs? Somebody has to fill those jobs that they're vacating because they're retiring, because retirees are retiring in place. I'm going to retire in place. I'm going to stay in my house till I'm 100 years old, I hope. I hope. And
hopefully it's 150.
You're right. Maybe it's 150. If I drink green tea, it'll be 151. So we can't keep building freeways to build our way out of growth. And so this is why when SCAG determines RENA, there's a lot of factors.
Which is the state agency.
Yeah.
That the local governments that a state is actually told them to.
Correct. Yeah. From Sacramento, housing says, here's your assignment, your quota. And then SCAG, Southern California State, they divide it up equally, not equally, but they divide it up based on a whole lot of criteria. One of which is where the jobs are, where transportation is, where the people are rent burdened, which means they pay more than 30% of their gross income in rent, where there's a low vacancy rate. Our vacancy in coastal cities is the same. The occupancy rate of apartments is 97, 98%. That means there's not 2% or 3% available because that's people moving in, people moving out. There are waiting lists. So in order to fill those jobs that are vacant, do we want to fill them with commuters driving in from 90 miles away? We have to build, look at 91 freeway through Corona. I don't even know if it's like 16 lanes wide or something like that now. It's just massive. And at some point we have to say, okay, do we add 2 more lanes? Do we add 4 more lanes? Or do we provide the housing where the jobs are so that we can continue to thrive? And California is the 6th largest economy in the world, and in order to stay there or even go up, we have to develop our economy, and the foundation of a good economy is housing.
Now, these mandates from the state, they're saying this didn't do their part of allowing the housing, right?
That's correct, and and I'm glad you brought that up because in 2017, the very first. The RENA mandates were always there, but the RENA mandates were also very low. Our last cycle RENA mandate was 1,300, and now it's 13,000, so it's 10 times greater than it was. Mostly because probably it was too low in 1,300 because that was after the 2009 recession. There were a lot of houses in inventory. There wasn't a whole lot of demand to build new. There is now. So in 2017, one of the senators, drafted Senate Bill 35. And Senate Bill 35 allowed developers to build what they want, where they want, as long as the underlying zoning allowed it, without having to get city council's approval or planning commission approval. That law was signed into law on September 29th of 2017. It became law in 2018. I brought forward legislation to sue over that, of the unconstitutional overreach of that, and we lost on appeal, as did another charter city, San Francisco. San Francisco lost as well. So Senate Bill 35 created opportunity for about 3,000 homes in San Francisco. And in our city, we have two, it's a dotted line, are they SB 30 projects or not? One I don't think is going to happen. And then, of course, now SB 35 is morphed into Senate Bill 423 because 35 sunsetted. So that was the start. And I said that from the council dais. I said, if you think the battle against high density is with the seven of us, it's in Sacramento and they're just getting started. And from that point forward, there are probably 100 bills that pass through the state legislature signed by the governor that intend to speed up and streamline the zoning of housing and ideally the production of housing. How that's translated into permitting is debatable because I think the state legislature is focused more on the sticks of the punishment or the penalties of not doing it rather than providing the incentives or the carrots to do it. And I think that there's opportunity to create incentive in the state legislature so that local city councils will say, okay, well, I'm not going to do this because I'm being punished to not do it. Well, maybe we should do it because now we're incentivized to do it. And one of my mantras was always that, if you want to maintain local control, the first thing that you have to do is actually exercise it. And saying no is not exercising local control. Saying yes, let's negotiate.
So to the developers, right? To the housing.
And really to the constituents too. You have to educate the constituents. I had a housing town hall when I was mayor, and we went through the whole process. We addressed all of the myths about increased traffic, increased crime. Are we importing the wrong kind of voters? Are we importing the wrong kind of, disengaged constituents? We went through the whole gamut and dispelled most of those myths. We can see that the impact of adding 2,500 units on Edinger, we don't have the traffic. We have traffic now because we're under construction on Edinger Boulevard. But when you have higher density next to retail and next to commercial, you have fewer car trips. Fewer car trips is less traffic. And when you add new people to a municipality, you add spending because you've brought new customers in. So it can be argued that each household is going to probably spend anywhere from $10,000 or $15,000 per year where they live, which generates net sales tax revenue for the city treasury. It also, since you've added new housing, you've elevated substantially the property value of that particular site, which generates property tax revenue, which also goes to the general fund. And in a public agency, the three main sources of income for the general fund, which is the discretionary part, is property tax, number one, sales tax, number two, and transit occupancy tax, or the tax we charge for visitors and hotels, is number three.
If you like California Insider and you like to know what's going on in California, make sure to check out Epoch Times. This is a newspaper that started by a group of Chinese Americans because of human rights abuses in China, and now is starting to grow here. Make sure to go to the Epoch Times website and check out the California section, where you can get a lot of fresh perspectives on what's going on in California. Now let's go back to the interview.
So you mentioned that you don't think 13,000 is the right number. Is it too much for a city like yours? Because we were talking to a lot of different city leaders, and some have told us the numbers are too much for them.
Is the number too much? It's hard to say. I mean, I served on SCAG, and I went through the methodology, and I went through all the process. And before we had the second round from HCD, the number was 7,000, 8,000, something like that, which
for your city, for Huntington Beach.
Which I thought then seems like an awful lot. That's 5 times what it was the last cycle. So it's probably too much, but I think that the too much decision is going to be made by the market. Because remember, the housing, it's really a three-legged stool. You have the local agency, the city or the county, that creates the zoning or the opportunity for the building to be built. Then you have the state legislature, which creates either the tax incentives for low income or the penalties for not zoning. And then you really have the market. So the market is going to be the ultimate decider if 13,000 units is too much. So we have a legal obligation, in my opinion, to follow state law and say, okay, we're going to zone for the 13,000 units. If you want to slow it down, there are building standards that you can create, which we did. We changed building standards for the Beach Energy Corridor specific plan, which could have slowed things down. And you can say, let's moderate this. But to say mandates, we're going to build nothing because we're mandated to zone for it, is really not good policy. If we were to say we're going to build something, and we're going to zone for what we're required to do and let the market decide, that's good policy because, quite frankly, new housing generates really good solid revenue. And we talked about the property taxes, we talked about the spending, we talked about a lot of things, and you create new vitality and new life, and and who knows, that person that's going to rent that new apartment is going to buy a house there, maybe start a business there, or take that big time engineering job at Boeing that just got vacated by somebody that retired, and keep that machine going.
One of the reasons that this shortage exists, is the cost of housing is going up.
Right.
And a lot is attributed to the shortage. There's a shortage, the cost of housing is going
Right.
up. Some people argue that no matter how much you build, there's still gonna people will be coming from across the globe. This is the most desirable place.
Sure.
And one of the most desirable places in the world. I mean,
Right.
probably is the best. I'm a little bit biased on that. We are here.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that? The cities that have developed, they've gotten more expensive, not less expensive.
Well, I think in cities that developed have gotten more expensive, and they would have gotten even more expensive had they not developed. And there is an argument that some will say, if you build nothing but luxury apartments and you charge $3.50 a square foot, then the old apartments are going to elevate their cost too, and the rents are going to go up there too. Well, maybe, but they also have to compete. So there's new product that's online. If you're in a 20-year-old apartment and you want something new and you can afford it, you're going to move into something new. And my personal story is a good case example of that. When I moved to Southern California in 1986, I was, in the managerial class, I thought it was a big shot, and then I had to have something nice, new apartment, brand new, I hoped. And I looked at apartments that were 20, 25 years old. And I said, no, I want in-unit laundry, I want a balcony, I want vaulted ceilings, I want granite countertops, I want all that stuff. And I'm willing to pay, then it was, $100 or $200 more. It was almost inconsequential now. And I did, so I chose a brand new apartment. And my second apartment was brand new, and then my first house was brand new. So there's a market out there that wants new product. And there is a finite capacity of, you say, okay, well, if we build, will the world come to us? Well, the world is only going to come if the jobs are there and the opportunity is there and the business environment is there. So you can't build, China is a good example. They build, apartments galore, and they've got to tear them down because they're not selling them. So we're not going to build apartments that have to be torn down. We're going to build apartments and moderate it based on market demand. And the market will decide how many apartments that we build. The zoning that we prescribe is going to create the opportunity for that new construction.
And there's another thought that we haven't had a lot of growth in the population in California. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of stalled. Do you think this shortage exists even though the population is not growing as fast?
Well, that's one of the arguments that I find that's not really holds a lot of water, because if you look at the criteria for how SCAG develops RENA, population is part of the equation, but it's not the driver of the equation. And I'll give you an example. What really is the driver is household formation. An example could be Siamak and his wife have 2 kids in 2010. They're 12 and 13 years old. The population in the Karami household is 4, and there's 1 house to serve 4 people. We're now 2020 census has come, it's now 2024. Both kids have graduated from college, they both have great jobs, and now you still have 4 people. Still 4 people in California, but now you have the demand for 3 households. We even have the demand for 2 households if one of them moves to Texas. So one of Mr. Karami's kids moves to Austin, Texas to find his or her future there. The other one stays. So you've doubled the demand for housing with a decrease in population because of household formation. So household formation is a factor that's in the methodology to determine how RHNA is calculated. And that's something that we have to really take a look at. If we're not going to have children anymore, we're going to stop having children, then there isn't household formation. So household formation is really a driver.
We are honored to be sponsored by Shenyun. Shenyun Performing Arts is reviving 5,000 years of lost Chinese traditional culture. It takes you back in time to the magical world of ancient China with a unique blend of brilliant dancing, beautiful costumes, and legends coming to life. The show choreography and production values are top-notch. However, it isn't just the technical ability of the dancers, it's the inner beauty and the devotion of the artist that will stir your soul to move you to tears. Make sure to go see it this year. Go to shenyun.com and book your tickets today.
It was spectacular, so beautiful.
Gosh, I thought I was going to heaven.
Oh, it was electric.
I'm getting chills talking about it.
It gets a 10 from me, that's for sure.
It was that good.
Absolutely marvelous.
Hands down the best show I've ever seen.
Now, you're pretty vocal about this. This is your issue. You care about housing. And can you tell us why?
Yeah, it's started when, like I said, when I moved to Southern California and I looked at old stuff, and the first city I looked at, my boss lived in Huntington Beach. He goes, "Mike, you need to move to Huntington Beach and be near me. We can carpool." So I look at 20-year-old apartments. I go, now they're 50 years old or 40 years old or whatever they are, and I go, I don't want shag carpet. I don't want popcorn ceilings. I don't want to go to the laundromat. I want to be upgraded and to as much as I can comfortably afford. So I want a new product. And I think that had I come to Huntington Beach in 1986, it'd be different than coming there in 1999. So there's 13 years that I had to work my way west to get there. Maybe served on the council.
Was it expensive?
Yeah, it was expensive. I mean, a new house, well, not a new house, but a house in the numbered streets in the 80s was $250,000. My home buying budget was $100,000. So I had to go, when I bought my first house, I had to go to Murrieta. So I bought my first house in Murrieta. I had to commute 70 miles to Compton, each way. And okay, that was not sustainable. I did that for 18 months and thought, what am I doing? I should have bought a condo in Lakewood or something. And so then when I got married, my wife and I she lived in Yorba Linda, or she lived in Brea, and then we ended up moving to Yorba Linda. And then we kept, traded up, and then traded size-wise down, but went west and we went to the beach. And we went to Huntington Beach because a lot of things. One is climate, of course. We love the weather. And what I wanted to do, we both wanted to do, is live someplace that was a walkable community. And I know there's a lot of talk about, nobody likes this 15-minute city discussion, but and nobody really wants to talk about walkability. But we've traveled all over Europe. We've traveled to New York City, San Francisco, Chicago. Nothing beats walking out your front door and walking 2 blocks to go to dinner, or 2 blocks to go to the nail salon or the hair salon, like my wife does. She walks to the hair salon and the nail salon is 2 blocks away. And the beach is 5 blocks, 6 blocks away. So we have a walkable city. It's not like an urban core like New York City, although I could probably live there too. But that appeals to me, and I know it appeals to a lot of other people. And it doesn't appeal to everybody. I know some people would prefer the suburbs. You have that choice. 70% of our city is single-family homes. 70% of our homeowners, or 70% of our residents live in single-family homes. And if they want to drive to the grocery store, that's great. They want to drive to the hair salon, that's great. I want to walk.
Do you think those areas will get changed for people that are single-family homes? Do you think the zoning in those areas will change?
I don't think so. And when SB 9 was passed, that was the
one that you can split the lot.
Split the house and split the lot. There was an economic feasibility study done at SCAG. And within the SCAG region is Ventura County to the Mexican border, excluding San Diego County. So it's Ventura, LA, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, and I left somebody out, Imperial County. All those counties. And they concluded that in order to effectuate splitting a house into a duplex and adding an ADU to each, There are probably 45,000 lots in the entire Skag region that could happen. So when we say, my single-family home's going to be, my neighborhood's going to be converted to fourplexes overnight, it's just not going to happen because you have zoning restrictions, 50% lot coverage. You could build a bigger house. We have parking restrictions except for ADUs. So it's a stretch. And I think to say that somebody that lives in a single-family home, I have a hard time thinking they're going to spend $300 a square foot to add on for what? I mean, and there's 45,000 units when you have millions of housing units is a blip on the radar.
Do you have any other thoughts for our audience?
Yeah, I think that, local elected officials, especially in the coastal region, should really take a look at, what is in their, what the best tool in their toolbox for economic development is rezoning. That is the single most effective tool to generate revenue and create economic prosperity in your municipality. If you have stagnant zoning and no opportunity for economic growth, eventually those big businesses, and I won't, let's say aerospace, let's not use a brand name, but if they run out of employees or all of their employees are in Palmdale or Lancaster, eventually they're going to move to Palmdale or Lancaster. And what we end up with is what one of my colleagues affectionately calls us a NORC, which is a naturally occurring retirement community. And we become a naturally occurring retirement community with no jobs, no economic vitality, restaurants closing, retailers closing, car dealerships not selling new cars to new people, to young people. And we end up with budget deficits that can't be fixed unless we do a sales tax increase. And then we're like, okay, is that sustainable? Because retail sales are down. If we add more sales tax, is that going to reduce the sales because there's more tax? And so it's a spiral. And it doesn't mean you have to embrace the mandates from the state. I would say still fight the state, but I would fight it a different way. And when I served 6 years on the Association of California Cities Orange County as the chair of the Housing Committee, and I said at pretty much every meeting, I said that the pathway to beating the state is through legislation and not litigation. And we can do that by making friends with our state legislators that are maybe on the other side and say, how can I moderate the impact of what you're trying to do? Or how can I work with you to create incentives so that we zone and that we want to come to the table and do this willingly and maybe even enthusiastically. And that's what I'd be doing. I'd be working with the state legislature and say, let's find incentives and a pathway to making it where we want to do this enthusiastically.
Mike Posey, former mayor and council member in Huntington Beach. It was great to have you on California Insider.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, and it was great being here.